my mother was very strong-willed. She was dominant. My stepfather, who raised me since I was the age of 3, was more passive. So I had this weird dynamic of a strong woman. She was very ahead of her time. She ran her own business in the 1960s. So one day she says to me, why didn't you vote for Kamala Harris? Are you racist? And I'm like, no. I said I just didn't like her policies. So that thing has been used a lot to divide people, but the weird thing is, it's all in the media, but if you go around regular people, everybody's getting along. We rarely have a racial incident. I live in Jacksonville.
If you get maybe 5 compliments in a week, you've gotten a lot. I would say that most men probably get maybe 10 compliments a year, right? Seriously. Yeah.
You get 5 compliments in a lifetime.
That's what I'm saying, right?
When people lost connection with their spiritual connections, they're like, I don't feel the power anymore. I don't know who I am. Maybe this guy can help me. So they created priests who say, well, I'll be the intermediary. I have a connection with spirit. I'm a king. I'm a priest. Come and do what I say, and I'll give you some of that connection. And so that's what created all the intermediaries. Now we're saying, we don't need these intermediaries. We can have our own connection with spirit.
Hey, Conscious Man 7 family, quick question before we start. Do you love the depth of these conversations but hate when ads break the flow? I get it. Ads can feel like speed bumps on a highway, pulling you out of that deep zone. That's why we created a way for you to enjoy every episode completely ad-free while supporting the show at the same time. For just a few bucks a month on Patreon or Locals, you'll get full access to uninterrupted episodes. You'll get direct access to me so you can ask me any questions that you have, some cool other perks like early releases, and you'll also help us keep bringing you the powerful conversations that mainstream platforms won't touch. The link is in the show notes. Join us there and be part of this movement. Ever look up and see those dull, gray skies streaked with chemtrails, and you feel your energy sink? You're not imagining it. Something in you knows the sky isn't supposed to look that way. But what if you could bring back the blue? What if there was a way to clear the air inside you and above you? That's where the Chembo comes in. They create powerful orgonite, tools that generate orgone energy, the life force that helps neutralize EMFs from your mobile phone, your Wi-Fi, and even 5G. It's nature's way of restoring balance, bringing cleaner air, calmer energy, and deeper sleep. Every piece from the Chembo is handmade, from tactical tower busters to beautiful pyramids and jewelry, crafted with the precise ingredients to generate real orgone energy. And here's the best part. They've proven it. For over 10 years, they've cleared thousands of miles of chemtrails, bringing the blue back to the skies around the world. So if you're ready to take back your weather and your well-being, go to thechembo.com. Use coupon code CM7 for 10% off and experience the shift for yourself. Don't fear the chemtrails or the EMF. Be empowered with the Chembo and never feel helpless again. If you are new to this podcast, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share, because that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. If you would like to support this podcast, please check out our merch store on Amazon with the brand Todd and Me. We've got some cool t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, and sweaters. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And if you're now starting a spiritual journey, you would like to start a spiritual journey, or you're currently on a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, please hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 and it will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Enjoy the show and stay tuned, because we have some more great content coming soon. What does it really mean to be a conscious man in today's world? A world where hustle culture burns us out and where sensitivity is often mistaken for weakness. Hello friends, welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. I am your host Todd Cave. Today, we're joined by a man who's been helping others master their mind, energy, and emotions for over 3 decades. Egan Sanders, a men's enlightenment coach whose mission is to help conscious men break free of the matrix without losing their soul. We'll dive into how men can embody true power that is conscious, compassionate, and soul-aligned, how to thrive without burnout, and why the old models of masculinity are crumbling before our eyes. But here's the part most people avoid talking about: the hidden shame, confusion, and spiritual exhaustion that so many men carry silently while pretending to have it all together. This conversation is going to challenge beliefs, ignite clarity, and may even change the way you define power itself.
When truth is blurred by lies and misinformation, perception becomes reality. What will you perceive your reality to be?
Liberate your fears and walk with me.
Sit down and meditate. Connect with your soul.
Be a monster and then learn how to control it.
You gotta be willing to do the work.
So it really goes really deep in terms of words and etymology and what they mean. So this is why it is really hard to really crack the matrix, because there's so many levels and layers to it, Hello, Egan. Welcome to the Conscious Man 7 podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me here, having this forum.
Yes, I'm looking forward to talking to you today because, as we were speaking off camera, I find that in recent times, I should say in modern times better, we don't really have a lot of spaces where men can actually talk about what it is to be a man, what masculinity looks like. We don't have a lot of role models. We don't have a lot of people we can look up to say, oh, that's an example of how a man should be. And I find that we have a lot of a feminization of our culture, our society. And what's happened is that we've swung so far to the other side of the pendulum that we've gone from one extreme to the next, where we had the suppression of, I guess you could say, the feminine, and now we're having the suppression of the masculine. And with my show and the conversations that I have, I'm trying to bring that pendulum a little more back in the center so that we can have balance. So, conversations like this, I think, are quite important. And I'm looking forward to talking to you today to, learn a little bit more on your perspective. And you're a little bit older than me, so to learn a little bit from you as well myself, because I do have my own views and ideas, but I try to be as open-minded as possible, because that is the only way you can actually truly learn and truly grow and not have yourself pigeonholed into an idea or a belief, because then that becomes a religion. And religions are the worst thing that's ever been invented for mankind. So I try my best to, stay as open-minded as possible and challenge even my own self in what I believe and think. And that's the only way you can get to truth, because truth doesn't mind to be challenged. And if you can't challenge yourself, like I say, you're stuck in a religion. So let's dive in. So you've been guiding people for over 30 years. What first woke you up to the path of men's enlightenment and energy mastery?
If I go way, way back to the real beginning awakening, when I was a little kid, I started to recall past lives. This is one of my abilities when I work with people, is that I can meet somebody, and if whatever their current issue relates to a past life or a pattern, I can start seeing it. Back when I was a little kid, I started to get memories. One was I was living as a Native American in the American Southwest in Arizona, and I started to describe the kiva, the ceremony of my father, Chief Underground, and I was Little Underground, and we were doing the ceremonies, and I was 5 years old, and my grandmother kept on saying, "And then what happened?" And I kept on talking in this voice, very serious, and then after 20 minutes, I said, "And that's it." And then I went back to talking like a little kid. So they knew that there was something unusual about me. I was strange then, and continue to be strange until my current time. So I had that ability, and I would I would do yoga. I would sit in the living room, and I would do these very elaborate yoga poses, all the asanas. My mother's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know." And I'm doing the kriyas, because I was a yogi in a past life. And then I that faded after 4 or 5 or whatever. Then many years later, when I was a teenager, and I was I was getting little glimmers of things like from music or like a book I'd read, and I'd say, well, there's something here I don't understand. Finally, when I went to my first year of college, I took an elective of Religions of India. So we had to read the Bhagavad Gita and all these things in reincarnation. I'm like, yes, this is talking to me. And from then on there, I began to see through the matrix, because I knew that the reality that we were being presented with was just kind of made up. There's an old existentialist story about there's an existentialist on a train, and the train is bobbing. So he reaches for the handhold and he can't remember, like strap, and he can't remember the word for strap. And he goes, I better grab that thing. And then he realizes that everything is made up. The name we have for your face and the train and language, it's all made up. But in that moment, he realized that everything is made up. So like when we talk about the matrix, people are just making up reality, but there's no absolute reality. So getting in touch with that at a young age, I knew I was seeing beyond the veils, is what they would kind of say. They would there's something more and bigger. But that was the beginning. And then I became aware of energies, and I was studying other things. I went to college for a year and a half, and then I dropped out, and I got a job at an office on Wall Street. And at night I put on my yoga clothes and eat brown rice and read metaphysical books, and that was my life, and I loved it. And I would read metaphysical books and studying these things, and then slowly began to learn about energy, sensing with other people. Like yourself, I'm sensitive. I could sense things about other people. And sometimes I would get too emotional and I wouldn't understand what I was feeling. I began to understand these weren't my feelings. They were from other people or other energies on the planet that I was picking up. So that was the beginning for me. Start.
It's interesting that you said that you got exposed to the Gita, because and that was in academia as well, that you were asked to read the Bhagavad Gita. And I've spoken about the Bhagavad Gita several times on my show and in several podcasts I've done. It is one of my absolute favorite books. And, because it talks about one of the most important things in this experience, which is attachments. And I think in my humble opinion, I think the Gita is all about the attachments to things and overcoming the attachments. So that's pretty interesting that you got exposed to that in one of your electives you said that you were doing.
Well, what was interesting was this was in Gainesville, Florida, because at that time I was born in New York, but I moved to Florida when I was 11. And then I went to the University of Florida. So I went to the teacher and, did the whole thing. Years later, 40 years later, I met a woman who lived in Gainesville. She was a Hare Krishna. So I became friendly with her and I went down. This was actually a couple of months ago. I went down and we were talking and I was like, yeah, I took my first class here. I go, with such and such. She goes, oh yeah, I know her. She's still at the university. So 40 years later. But the funny thing was, that's the largest Hare Krishna temple, in the United States, is in Gainesville, Florida. They have a beautiful temple, all these festivals and everything. And I just thought, what a journey that I had started there. And then I came back to Florida eventually after living in other places. And then I met somebody, and the teacher, I think she was the head of the department or whatever by then. And it was just kind of a funny thing. But reincarnation, I remember Arjuna and some of the other stories, they were talking about reincarnation. A guy's a warrior and he goes, well, if I die, I'll just take on a new body. No problem. That's the problem with reincarnation is you're like, well, if you just get a new one, that kind of thing. But yeah, those classics, even though religion, ideology and hierarchies and all these things took over Christianity or Buddhism, Islam, all these things, if they always go back to the founder, to the original things, that person was having revelations and was having a true divine experience and whatever. And then people are like, well, we have to explain this to other people. We better write it down in a book. But the book isn't the experience. But those books, if you go back and you're open, you can channel in great inspiration. So they're very, very important. The Vedas, all these things, the Quran, there's very important things in there. Not all of it, because it was adulterated and some things were changed over time. But there's a lot of good information in there that can really awaken you and accelerate you.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I always tell people that you need to read a plethora of books, because not one book has in everything. And after a while, you get something called discernment, and you're able to piece together the puzzle a little bit better because every book has in a bit of a part of the puzzle that makes the whole. And I think journey here is to find the whole, but you need to have so many different experiences, read so many different types of books, do different types of psychedelics, etc., in order to put those pieces together, you know? So
different experiences. Let me just touch upon that. It's important. Yes, I knew a lot of people did psychedelics. And the important thing for all the listeners to understand is that the current generation is into evolution and transcendence. We're trying to transcend the old paradigm. But there were always transcendentalists. There were always people trying to get to another state of consciousness. Lord Byron, the poet, they would drink. They would do alcohol or do hallucinogenics or other things like that. People drink is because they're trying to transcend the normal state of consciousness. Also, it's important to really, just like you mentioned, study a lot of different things. I mean, I studied Egan Scientology. I had a roommate who was a Scientologist at one point. That he was an interesting character. Christianity, Judaism. I learned a little bit about Islam. Aliens. Extraterrestrials, all these different things, and what you kind of understand is that it's just the infinite, the divine, expressing through these many different forms. But there's so many interesting teachers. Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, different things. Shakespeare had metaphysical things in some of his, monologues and dialogues and plays. But what I often see with a lot of people is they become too fixated on one ideology. And so what happens is, like, I'll typically, like, I remember I did an expo about a month ago. I was talking to a woman. She saw, men's Enlightenment coach. And so she came over and was talking about, Jesus. Like, everything was Jesus. This is Jesus. That's Jesus. And I'm like, yes, he was a great guy, but Jesus, if we go down the rabbit hole, Jesus was a Jewish guy. That's kind of what was going on there. And then he actually traveled all over the world and was studying with many other teachers. He was in India and other countries. So, but people become very orthodox, and what happens is they contract. And my whole life is, and just the same thing that we share in common, that's why I'm here today, is expanding beyond, go beyond all the definitions and the ideas and the structures and beliefs, because we're told these stories. Example, the Ascension. 30 years ago, they're saying, well, Jesus and all these masters are going to come to earth, and it's going to be a great awakening. All these great things are going to happen. Well, it's 30 years later. I'm still kind of waiting for those things to happen. But they had to tell us a story so that it would encourage us to grow and develop. But everybody's always telling you a story of how spirituality is supposed to be or what's going to happen. And that's fine. And some of those can be true. But too often, if you follow that dictum or try to be obedient to that, you will eventually have to break out of that structure, because there are no rules. We're just making it up as we go along, and anything is possible. So I don't want to be limited by another person's belief system, no matter how great they are.
yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, this is why we're having this conversation today. So was there a personal breaking point, a matrix moment that pushed you into redefining masculinity for yourself?
When you ask that question, I'll go back to a very profound experiences I had. So I was talking about reincarnation. When I was a little kid, I started remembering things, and I was in my 19, 20 or something, started to kind of like do like hypnosis, and I was trying to do different ways to get to those memories. I thought that would be exciting. Well, it ended up as over time I started going on those past life memories, it was my soul going, now we're going to look at all the junk, crappy stuff you did so that you can now improve yourself. I'm like, oh, God. But in those days, I went back, and I was 20 years old. I was at a channeling event. I'm listening to the guy, and I'm like, okay, this is interesting, whatever he's talking about. I started to get very woozy. My eyes closed, and I went into an alternate state of consciousness. And I saw it looked like these little children were like gathering around me. And I'm like, why are these kids in my mind around me? Anyway, my Kundalini awakened. I felt a bolt of energy move up from my base chakra all the way up through the head. And then it felt like my brain split in two. And when it came back, I had total recall of my original life on Earth, because I wasn't originally from here. I was from another planet. I had that total recall. This is very unusual. Usually you have like little bits and pieces. And then I was like, oh. And then I went through a very weird period for 6 months where I'm like, well, I know myself as Egan, and I'm remembering some of these other lifetimes, but I'm like, I'm not really human. And then I'm like, well, I was an alien. I'm like, well, I'm not really an alien either. I'm a soul. And this is a true story. I was around this time, I was like questioning everything. Like, well, who am I? Am I this? Am I that? Whatever. And since then, I've been all the different races, and I've been in all different countries. I mean, I go back like about 80,000 years, so I've been around. But in this particular instance, I was on a subway, and I saw like a young Latin man. I was in my 20s. He was maybe a little bit older than me. And I felt all this sexual energy. And I was like, wait a minute, am I gay too? Like, what's going on here? And then I was like, wait a minute. I think I was picking up the energy around his aura. But then I said, well, if I was a woman in a past life, I would have a different sexual orientation in this one. And I've never had a homosexual relationship. Just like women in this life. What's not to like? But it made me realize that the soul, sometimes when we say gay people, like a gay man who's very effeminate, you say, well, why is that guy gay? How did that work out? Genetics? No, it's because most of their past lives, they were a female. So then they say, well, let me mix it up this time and come as a man, but they still have the conditioning from the other lifetimes. Same thing with the very masculine women. Now, having said that experience, it was very cosmic. I eventually just was going through this very weird period. And then I said, oh, okay, for now I'm Egan. I can't worry about who I was in a past life and who I'm going to be in a future life. Who am I now? I'm Egan, heterosexual. This is what I'm doing. Let's go. And that was it. Later on with the masculinity, though, and you asked, that's kind of what you were getting to as well. In my family, my mother was very strong-willed. She was dominant. My stepfather, who raised me since I was the age of 3, was more passive. So I had this weird dynamic of a strong woman. She was very ahead of her time. She ran her own business in the 1960s when she was raising me. She was like a pioneer in women's business world. And my father was in the business with my stepfather was in the business with her. He was very passive. And so I had this weird thing where I took on some of his characteristics of being like the pleaser. If I'm kind enough, if I gotta make them happy, otherwise the love is going to be pulled away. And my mother had a habit of when she got mad at you, she would pull all of her attention away. One time, her birthday was around Valentine's Day. So her birthday was about a week, around Valentine's Day. And so one time, Valentine's Day, I was like 7, and my stepdad said, okay, let's get together here. So he got cards and candy and gifts and everything. So we sat in the living room, and we're like, me and my dad are sitting there going like, here, here's cards and here's gifts. And my mother comes in, and she was like in a bad mood. She's like, what is this? And she's like looking at this, and she's like, psh. And she goes, what, you got me this? And she's like throwing it there. Anyway, she didn't talk to me for 2 days. She was just in one of those moods. And tell you, that really affected me psychologically because she could just pull away the love, and she would just, do that. My father was devastated. She used to, like yell at him, and it was pretty bad. So I would say growing up as a young man, I was like, how do you please these broads? That's a New York term, broads. It's not really politically correct. But how do you please these broads? Because I don't know. And I was always like, well, if I'm just nice, or if I'm just like my, whatever. Later on, I met my biological father. I hadn't seen him since I was 3. I met him 30 years later. My mother died. And he was all man. He was a masculine guy. He didn't put up with anything from anybody. He was very different. So it was very interesting. So it was very confusing as a young man. And I see this now in the current generation in the 20s and 30s where these young men are like, well, I better not be too offensive. How do I please them? Can I say the right thing? If I don't say the right thing, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be exposed. I'm going to be canceled. And so I can't imagine that level of pressure. If I had been 20 or 30 and I've been trying to figure out like how to act, and then the pressure of all the social media, I think I would have gone nuts. I probably would have become very introverted. I think that's what's happening with a lot of the young men, especially on the spiritual path. They're becoming like, it's not safe out there because there's so many masculine women now. But I was prepared, like with my mother, because she was very, could be sweet. I wasn't saying she wasn't. She was very physically beautiful and very sweet and very feminine. But man, when you've crossed her, she came at you. You better be ready to fight. And I was often like battling with her, psychologically, because she's like, "You're gonna do this," and I'm like, "No, I'm not." So, finding who yourself as a man. Now, ultimately, I found that man wasn't about, hunting or, I did bodybuilding for a while too. That was another thing where I became a bodybuilder and stuff like that. I was trying to find like who I was. I found that being a man is basically being true to your word and having confidence in yourself and persisting despite what's going on around you. So people challenge you, give you a hard time, or you have a big challenge, you're like, it'll work out. That's being a man, is it'll work out. I'll just keep plugging along, listen to other people, learn, but it'll be okay. The weak man is like, I don't know what to do. I better listen to that person. I better listen to her. I better do what the society says. Oh, heavens to Betsy's. No, man, that ain't being a man. So that's the essence of the male energy, the solar power. The feminine energy is giving love, nurturing, just loving. And now we have a lot of people where they're trying to blend those, where they say, well, I have a strength, but I also have the givingness. I don't know if I figured it out yet, but if I balance it out and I'm compassionate but strong, that's the best way I have found.
I like to say that I am firm on fear, because I would give people a fair chance and forgive and stuff and ask for forgiveness. But I'm firm in the sense of I have boundaries and I have red lines, and I don't appreciate when they're infringed on, or when they're infringed on, I pull you up on it. And if you repeatedly do it, then, then that's it, right? Like, we have to separate, because, that's why they call red lines for a reason, But you're totally correct. I'm 43 years young, soon to be 44 years young. And I would probably struggle if I were 20 years old now, coming up in this generation, because honestly, at my young age, I still have had effects of social media, but it was not as much as the younger generation, because I had it as I was an adult and not when I was in my adolescent years. So I still had a bit of a personality that was formed. So I learned a lot through trial and error and battlefield experience. With the youngsters now, they don't have battlefield experience, because what you were talking about, men and spirituality, it also transfers to sex, where I think 30% of males between the ages of 18 and 30 are either a virgin, sexually inactive, not caring about pursuing a woman, or have not had sex in 1 year. Now, 80 to 30 is when men are in their absolute prime for testosterone, workability to work 70, 80 hours a week, with hardly any sleep. You can be in the best physical shape for bodybuilding, athletics. We're talking about men in their prime, and they're not even having sex, procreating, chasing girls. They have no hunger for anything. They just go to work and they come back and they play on their video games or scroll on their phone. So
technology steals agency, and it can steal purpose. They're talking about AI and everything. Well, if a computer is going to be able to do all these things, what's a guy going to do? If you're dating a woman, and this happened to me, I was dating a woman who made 3 times my income. She was in real estate. So if she's making all that money and she doesn't really need me to provide money and do this, what am I there to do with her? Hold her purse? And so now we have computers and all these things say, well, the computer is going to do this and the robot's going to do this. And if you want sex, just watch pornography. And the guy's like, what am I going to do? Eventually, what I think is going to happen, we'll go through a phase with this. People will say, okay, well, it's like the Great Depression. About 100 years ago, the Great Depression, all these people grew up and they didn't have any money. And that generation had a certain experience that other people didn't have, just like the people who went through the 60s. I think what's going to happen is, at least psychically, what I sense is in the next 20, 30 years, they'll develop a new drive and a jump gate system where people will be able to go to other planets. We're not that far off from it. And what will happen is they'll begin to settle other planets, and they'll say, well, we're Mormons. We're going to go to our own planet and then go off in there. We're like, we're from Africa. We're going to go off there. We're conservatives. We're going to go off there. So any reality you want, you can go to that planet and you'll simply do it and people will be able to do it. We can do it right now because if you say I'm conservative, you simply go live in a conservative place. But eventually with that jump gate technology and the ability to go to other planets and everything, they'll have breakthroughs. That's what Elon Musk is working on. He doesn't always say it, but he's doing other things. They'll have that technology. People will be able to spread out throughout the galaxy. We're really only at the beginning. We're at the beginning of the whole thing because I go in the future because I actually can see some future lives and everything like that. That's another weird story that I have. There's all sorts of planets and things. People are living on asteroids. I have a life where I live on an asteroid in the future.
Damn.
We make it a habitat. So there's all sorts of things. So we'll be able to explore it. But right now we're in a unique exploration because there was a period in Atlantis that was very similar to this. Not exactly. You know about the precession of equinoxes where every 26,000 years
Yes.
astrological thing. So there was a period in Atlantis where, again, we had the technology and everything, and there was this great spiritual awakening. But it was a much smaller population. There were certain specific things to that. In a way, I feel like we're moving through that again, but with more complexity. More people on the planet. There's never been 8 billion people on this planet. I know because I've been here for 80,000 years in different bodies. There ain't never been anything this close to that. There's been lots of people, but not 8 billion. We're probably going to get about 10 billion, and then we're going to begin to decline. That's why you see a lot of young people who are not having sex and doing other things because people are going to say, well, if computers will do everything for me, and, I don't need a partner really for this, that, and the other thing, or you can have test tube babies, why have families? And so there'll be some people are going to say, well, I'm just going to, or it's too expensive. I'm going to opt out. And as you become more technologically advanced, there is less children. Most of the children being born right now are in countries that are less technologically developed or from cultures. They're like, well, this is what we do, man. We're going to have babies and, procreate. So the Ikimora, I think, is the name of the people in Japan. These are people who sit in their apartments all day long, looking at anime, ordering food in. They live with their parents. I think there's like 500,000 in Japan. And Japan's population is going way down. They're actually trying to get people to move there. But the Japanese are very like, no, we don't want foreigners here. If you go to Japan, everything is, if you go to a 7-Eleven, everything are machines, like soda machines or dispensing machines, because they can't get enough people to actually work and, work at like at the counter. So they have every type of kind of machine. You can make pizza. You can get, laundry supply. I mean, everything. It's like there's wall-to-wall machines because they can't get enough people. Eventually they'll have robots. And eventually they'll have robot girlfriends and boyfriends. So we're having lots of fun here. We go a lot of different ways in the conversation, but it's a very strange period. So yeah, the guy thinks I'm a single guy, I'm 20. Do I want a woman who has all sorts of psychological problems and wants to dominate me? Or would I like this android where I can take the personality of my favorite porn star, put her in this android, and she does whatever I do? We know what those guys are going to do. Now, for me, that's not my thing because I like a real human being, even though some of the women are difficult to deal with. I'd rather have flesh and blood, but a lot of these cats are going to say, you know what? It's just easier. I don't want to go through all that personal growth. Give me an android. It's already happened.
It is true. And I think that humans, we tend to like to stay in our comfort zones and we tend to like the path of least resistance. So this is why we are not really evolving. So
and that's a killer of spiritual growth if you get too much in the comfort zone. So you have to keep on punching out because you get too comfortable. Like, oh, I'll just sit at the ashram and do my mantras and follow the guru. You ain't going to learn much after a while. You got to get out there and get into conflicts with people. That's my favorite way of growth, of getting into conflicts with people and say, now, what did I learn from that? Anyway, sometimes the lesson is not to get into conflicts with people.
It's true. So in your early years teaching spiritual growth, when did you notice men struggling most with purpose, sensitivity, or identity?
About 30 years ago, I went to a workshop with a guru. His name was Baba Maharaj, although he changed his name several times. That's kind of the racket in India. They change their name a lot of times with their marketing. So anyway, but he was a powerful guy, and he was like very spiritual. He wasn't actually Hindu. He was mixed race, but he had become a Sikh. A Sikh is actually the correct pronunciation. A Sikh Hindu, and he studied with Muktananda and the golden chain of all those gurus and everything. You get around the guy, you felt like electricity coming off of him. I mean, it was something. And I was like, all right, now here's finally a guy I can relate to, whatever. And so that was the beginning. But after that, I became more aware as I would go into the New Age communities. I was also a pagan for a while. And I'm like, I was meeting all sorts of interesting people. I went to another workshop, it was a relationship workshop. I think it was 1995. 5 guys, 23 women. So we get there, and there's one point we had to do a thing where the men sat on one side of the room and the women sat on the other side. And the women just let us have it with all their complaints about men. So we're taking it here, and then we got to say what we felt and everything. But I started to notice around that time, these very masculine women. It was another woman I met around that time. She was like, yeah, if a guy cries around me, it's over. And she was like a real tough woman. And I'm like, so I began to notice those types. I also noticed women who were very ephemeral. Now in the New Age ecosystem, there's all these different types of women. They're the warrior women. I'm embodied. I have perfect blonde hair, and you too can have this if you follow me. So there's those kind of women who are very masculine. And then there's these women who are like, oh, my life has always been broken. Nothing will ever change. And I'm like, well, that's not true. You just got to work through these things, So I was like watching all these people. And I noticed that with the men, then I started meeting all these we call them snags. Snag is a sensitive New Age guy. There was a song written called, Snag, he likes to cry at, whatever, like, at women's circles, a snag. It's a famous song, you can Google it. But I meet all these snags. And then I realized I was a snag. Because, I had the Jesus sandals, I had the little goatee. I would drive my car listening to Enya. So that's like a snag. You have the Jesus action figure. These are the things. If you have these things, you are a snag. So I went to I'll never forget, there was this guy named Jade Waha Grigori. He's a shaman. And we did a sweat lodge. So he built this tent, and we get in the sweat lodge. And it's like 5,000 degrees in there. And I'm like sweating, and I'm like, ugh. And he started talking about, there are lots of soft men in the world now. You're a warrior. You have to stand up straight when you're in the tent. I'm like, okay. He started like yelling at us and everything. And I came out of that thing, and I'm like, what a jerk. And then years later, I was like, you know what? He wasn't a jerk. He had it right. And I emailed and I said, you were right. And he goes, yeah, I know. So there were a lot of quiche-eating men. That was the gay culture also coming more into the mainstream. Like, okay, it's okay to be gay. That's great. Doesn't mean that I'm effeminate or going to wear stylish clothes, although perhaps this clothes. I don't know. There were all these different things, and social engineering. This is something that is very strong. It's been in the movies for like the last 10 years, where there was a very specific agenda on the part of Hollywood to feminize men. They began with all sorts of TV shows. These were like with liberal progressive ideas, which at that point, I was more liberal progressive at that point when I was younger. But now what happened all those years later is what's happened is they will take a male character. If you watch any modern movie from Hollywood, all the men are idiots or lunkheads. All the women are in charge. They're the ones who are smart and can do everything. Suddenly, a 4-foot-tall woman can be a superhero, knocking over 500-pound men. I mean, it got really distorted, and so the box office for a lot of movies and TV shows just went in the toilet because they kept on trying to promote this thing. Because people are like, "Well, I don't want to see some wimpy guy being a hero and like women, slapping other people around. I don't want to see, some of these, gender swapping things. Like, why are you, you're gonna make this hero? You're gonna make Rambo a woman now? Like, what are we doing here?" And it's a shame because women can be warriors. There's nothing to matter with Wonder Woman, and that's fine. But there was a concerted effort by Hollywood to feminize men and the society in general, and now it's backfired because women don't really want an overly feminine man. They don't mind a sensitive man or a compassionate man, but they don't want a guy who can't change the oil, who like is obedient, just like, a beaten down man. Nobody wants that. Just as we don't want a woman who's like overly masculine and aggressive and acts like a man. You're like, hey, are you a dude or what's going on here? You can calm down. So that balance has been lost, and that's why society is spiraling out of control in a way, because people are like, well, how am I supposed to act? The society says this way. This is what Hollywood says, and my parents say it's okay for me to question my gender identity at age 4 and get surgery or something. I mean, it's gotten kind of wacky.
Absolutely, it's gotten wacky. And me and my mate in England, we text each other. This is back in the day. We still text each other now, and I think that if we were to go through our texts for the last 10 years, we've probably documented the fall of our civilization, because we were seeing these things come in from like 10 years ago. And we were like, dude, Is it just me, or stuff is getting really, really weird? And we kept saying, surely it can't get weirder. And every year we kept saying, like, we were wrong. It just kept getting weirder and weirder and weirder. I
remember walking out of the Force. You said 10 years. It's about right. I remember walking out of the Force Awakens, the movie that they redid Star Wars, Force Awakens. So it's basically a female character who's the new hero. She's instantly good at everything. They call it the Mary Sue. Somebody who's good at everything, doesn't have to go through any training. She's just a woman, and so she's brilliant and she's powerful. And I remember walking out of that movie and going, wow, how awful was that movie? I was laughing at how bad it was. I was like, that was awful. All they did was remake the first movie, put a female character in it. And I was laughing how awful that was. And I'm like, that's not going to survive. And with each other Star Wars movie, it got worse and worse and worse. And now Star Wars is practically dead. Star Wars, Star Trek, Doctor Who. They ran everything into the ground. Video games. They ran them into the ground by sticking female characters into everything. So when you were friends and your friends were talking about all this stuff, so you saw that, what other things did you see other than the feminization? What other things did you see in the culture that were changing?
It was very much political correctness, because in the UK, political correctness is on steroids compared to other places in the world. Well, probably Canada, Australia, yes. Y'all don't have it so much in the United States, but United Kingdom is very, very big on political correctness.
Well, they're jailing people. I saw the thing. They jailed like 12,000 people for comments they made on social media. That's crazy.
Yeah. So we saw a lot of that coming out. And basically, in terms of like the law and everything, certain groups of people, because he's white, I know me, I'm darker skin, and we are good mates. And we said, but dude, this is just not right, because just because the guy is dark skin doesn't mean he should get off. And then just because the guy is white skin doesn't mean the man's guilty. So we were seeing it amongst ourselves from then. And
the racism thing too, that's really important that you mentioned about it. Now, my father was in Egypt. My mother was very pale. So if she had not been pale, I would have been a little bit darker, although I look very pale right now. But I'm half Egyptian, and so I have kind of a unique, perspective on things. But the racism, this is really weird. I'm glad we talked. I had a feeling we were going to talk about this a little bit. That's very strange now, where one side of the political spectrum, like everything's racism. I was dating a woman the last year or so, and she was very liberal. I used to be liberal, and then I became a libertarian. I don't care who the candidate is. I just want the ideas. And so we had the election. I said, well, you got Trump and you got Harris. Whose ideas are better? And like, well, Harris, I don't know. Based upon her record and what she was talking, which changed every 5 minutes, couldn't trust her. At least Trump, I was like, well, there's certain things that I agree with him with. I'm going to vote for that guy. So we're going and we're having our relationship, and she would like start bringing up these things, about politics. And I would talk to her rationally and say, well, you say this. I said, well, here's what actually the facts are. And anyway, she got mad at me. So one day she says to me, why didn't you vote for Kamala Harris? Are you racist? And I'm like, no. I said, I just didn't like her policies. So that thing has been used a lot to divide people. But the weird thing is, it's all in the media. But if you go around regular people, everybody's getting along. We rarely have a racial incident. I live in Jacksonville. A third of the population is black. I've lived here 4 years. Never had a problem. neighbors, people I work with, people I socialize with, not a problem. But if you looked on the media, especially the Democrats, it's like every white guy is a racist. It's a race war. It's a race war. And I'm like, what reality are you doing it? That's part of the propaganda and the brainwashing that they're doing. And it's a shame because they're trying to divide us. But just like when Charlie Kirk died, when you go to these Republican rallies, it's not just all white people. There's Asian people, there's black people, there's Spanish people. You know, it's pretty diverse. But that's the other brainwashing. So feminization, you know, cancel culture, racial divisions, you know, trying to, you know, split people up against each other. Immigration is another issue. I'm sorry?
Political correctness. Political correctness.
What else? What else comes up when you think about the change that we're undergoing?
Immigration as well. And I think the whole mission is to take away us from spirituality, searching from within, doing the work on ourselves, and, you know, being, especially men, being on their purpose. Because I like how you had described earlier what it is to be a man. And I am actually starting, I never really thought about what it meant to be a man, but I am more thinking now that is honoring your word and living your purpose, staying on your mission. When you know you have a mission, you stay on it. And I know that one of my missions is to do this podcast, and I'm going to stand on business, and I'm going to, no matter how difficult it gets, because there are challenges, but I'm just going to honor the word to myself and to my higher self that I'm going to do this podcast and share information so I can teach people stuff through having great guests like you and other guests, because we've definitely lost our path, you know? So you say your mission is to simplify the spiritual path. What illusions or overcomplications do you see most men trapped in today?
Part of my process of going within what you just mentioned was I do a lot of belief work. So to understand the pattern, I remember when I was your age and I thought, I'm so smart, I know everything. And then I hit a real tough patch for about 10 years. I'm like, I don't know anything. I had to start all over again. But one of the things was the mental and emotional mastery. Learning to change your mental patterns and emotional patterns and going into that very deeply. If you don't do that, you're basically trapped. You're being pulled in different directions. You have to know your purpose in life as a human being, whether that's a man or a woman. But for men, we're having a little bit more of a difficult time because we're being asked to change more than women. Yes, women are in the workplace and they're trying to balance the home life and the business life and other things. They're going through changes. But men, fundamentally, we're changing thousands of years worth of evolution. Where now we have to have a more open heart, more in touch with our emotions. In the old days, a guy had a job. He drove a cab. He'd go off at 4 o'clock in the morning, spend 10 hours or 12 hours in his hack, come back, say, here's my money, give it to the wife. She had taken care of the kids and whatever. Life was very simple. You were just trying to survive and support the family. Now it ain't that easy. It's a very different thing because you can go out and work 10 hours a day and come back to your partner and they're like, I'm doing the same thing. What are you complaining about? So reframe the question again, because I lost the thread a little bit, as I often do.
Sure. So basically, you said that your mission is to simplify the spiritual path. So okay. What illusions or overcomplications do you see most men trapped in today?
The idea what being a man is, I've got to do it all by myself. I can't show my emotions. I have to suffer. I'm spiritually awakening, but I better hide that, not talk about it too much. I don't want to appear weak. I used to go to the gym. When I was around 23, I decided to become a bodybuilder. I made 140 pounds. Within 3 months, I force-fed myself, and I went to the gym every day. I was 175 pounds of pure muscle. I could bench about 450 pounds. So I wasn't, a little squeamish guy. And then over time, I would go back to bodybuilding here and there. The last year or so, I let go of some of these ideas. So I still go to the gym. I go on the tread. I do some push-ups and whatever, but I'm not trying to get bigger. I no longer equate my physical size with who I am. It's important to be physically in good shape, but more muscles doesn't make me more of a man, doesn't make me stronger. Clearer beliefs, more self-love, more honoring my integrity, more doing what I say I'm going to do and sticking to that, more being honest with myself. A lot of my spiritual growth really came from, I call it the two-step, which is number one, I always admit how I'm really feeling, and then I can change it in some way. Something comes up in my life, I'm like, oh, that didn't feel very good. What am I actually feeling? Unfortunately, a lot of men and people in the spiritual community, spiritual bypass. They feel some negative energy and they're like, oh, I've been taught just to think positive. I better not feel that. Let's brush that away and put a smile or pretend like I'm not affected. What happens is they stuff down all these emotions. And you know what happens if you stuff stuff down? Eventually it explodes. There's a funny episode about Kramer where he's doing serenity now, serenity now. Every time he gets upset, he goes, serenity now. And then one day he explodes because he was stuffing all his emotions. It's true. So one of the obstacles is trying to be a tough guy. Trying to be a tough guy. You talk to any like guy in the military. I got some clients who are military people I coach. Or you talk to people who have very difficult jobs. Yeah, they're scared. You're going into a war. You're scared. You're having problems in your marriage. You're scared. You know, you're transcending your normal state of consciousness, and maybe you're having an awakening or a dark night of the soul. You're scared. You're not going, this is great. I'm having a great time. You're like, I'm scared. My ego is being challenged. I don't know. I'm in the unknown. You're scared. So you have to be willing to just admit that you're scared, face it, and not have to be the tough guy, because we're cracking open the egg. That's what you're doing. You're cracking open, baby. And you're like, okay, if I'm going to evolve my conscious, I got to crack open what my beliefs are. And sometimes you discover things about yourself that are very dark, especially with past lives. Start having recall of I went through it several months ago, where I cracked open a past life that I didn't really want to load too much. I wanted the good stuff, where I was doing the good things. But I found out these ones where it's like, yeah, I was not such a nice guy. Brief summary was that there was a life where I was a warrior. There was a war. So I got drafted because we all had to go. In the first 15 minutes, I got knocked unconscious. Hours later, I woke up. Like 99% of the people were dead. I mean, even as I talk about it now, there just was blood and just bodies and just, it was the most horrific thing. But my side won. So a brigade came by and they go, oh, what a great job you did. You won the whole section here. Fantastic. We're going to make you governor of the area. So for that whole life, they thought I was a war hero, even though I got knocked. I hadn't done anything. I was an awful war. I could barely hold a sword. I was like a farmer. But I got knocked out and they said, well, you did a great job. You were on the winning side. You're the governor. So I had an injury. I had a bum leg. And for that life, I basically was an alcoholic. And I never told anybody that I was actually kind of a coward, and just, had a lot of slaves and, sex with slaves and drinking and trying to like not talk about my war record. And I was in charge of like a huge area. And so then later on, I started meeting some of the people who'd been my slaves and other things. And I'm like, the ramifications of that. And I was like, oh God, another life. I lived in Atlantis. I was a mine master. And so this was sort of like a guild that would do missions. We were bodyguards and we would messengers and we would do certain sketchy things like the CIA would do, like these guys would do. So I was sent on a mission by my boss, and he said, oh, it's a great mission. You're going to make a lot of money from this. I'm like, okay, let's do it. He was lying to me. He sent me on the worst, most dangerous mission. And when I got compromised, I was programmed to kill myself. So I jumped in a body of water and I drowned, rather than find the information of my body that I was carrying. So it's like, oh, I gave my power away to that person. So there were certain lessons I had to learn, and those ultimately came down to taking back your power. So it's the paradox with men is that we're very powerful, but if you don't know how to access that power, you can't fully express it. I thought if I was strong enough and had enough money or power or status, that would be a great thing. As I've seen those other lifetimes, I found that wasn't. It was more, what are my belief systems? How can I act with integrity? How can I be compassionate with other people and fair with other people and fair to myself? most men are not fair to themselves because they're expected to carry society, no
Okay,
matter how difficult it is.
it's true. So you often talk about breaking free of the matrix without the toxic hustle. What exactly is this matrix in the masculine context?
You would interpret it slightly differently, but after these years of really studying it, I've broken it down to three things. I just did a whole video series on YouTube about it, but three things. The matrix is composed of three things. One is your ego mind, part of your mind that's always talking to you. We all have an ego. It's a container for your soul. We all need one, just like your body is a communication device. Your ego has to contain your personality. That's fine. It's always talking to you. Unfortunately, it has a lot of bad information. It tries to scare you, or it's very limited in a lot of ways. Got the ego. Next thing is the echo of reality. So if I look out at right now my window, we've been having bad weather. I can psychically feel that everybody's bummed out because the weather doesn't look that good. Looking at the reality, like, okay, this is physical reality. This is a glass, and here are my eyeglasses, and this is my body. Okay, well, this must be all that there is. So we get blinded by the physical reality. Third thing is the mass consciousness, which we can call the invisible energies or impersonal energies. So quite often on a Sunday morning, you'll wake up and go, Sunday morning, what am I going to do? You don't know what to do. Some people are going to church, but a lot of people don't know what to do because they're not going to school. They're not going to work. They don't know what to do. And so there's kind of like a strange kind of vibe. But Monday morning, it's like, all right, got to get to work, got to get to school. You feel that energy. Holidays have an energy. So the energy of other people can affect us because we're picking it all up. It's a psychic politics that's going on where you're constantly connected to every other human being. And depending upon your belief systems, you're either going to bend to the will of the mass consciousness or the ego, or look at the outer reality and say, well, this is all that there is. I can't really go beyond this. Or you transcend it. But that's the veils, those three things, the ego, the echo, and the impersonal energies of the mass consciousness. That's what we're breaking through with the matrix. That's what the Matrix film was actually talking about, where he was like bending the reality, except that nobody's going to do that in a week or a month. It takes a lifetime or lifetimes to really break through the matrix, at least in our current generation. So you have different words for it, but you know the same thing that I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So how does modern hustle culture actually disconnect men from their spiritual power instead of enhancing it?
There's a whole belief system around money. I just did another series of YouTube videos about, abundance. So the hustle is like, well, first of all, how money is allocated in the culture. People think there's not enough. There's not enough. Money is made up. These green pieces of paper, just pulling up my wallet here. It looks like a cell phone, but it's not. Yes, I have, I don't know, $45. It smells good. It's just made up. We just made it up. There's no, when Obama was passing this thing when we had the market crash and everything.
Which one? QE1, QE2?
The 2008 one. He's like, all right, just put more money in there. When you hit a button and then they just printed more money. But it didn't come from a farm. It's not backed by anything. It's just, okay, I will give you, here, Todd, I'm going to give you this piece of green paper, and now you give me $10 worth of, enlightenment. It's just made up. So there's this whole thing about money, it's made up. And then now you have to earn it. Okay, well, now if I want the $10, I got to, work for a half an hour, whatever it is. And we build this whole structure, but the universe doesn't work like that. We live in infinite abundance. And abundance isn't just money, it's like love. So if we think about limitations, like, oh, I want love. All right, well, I have to get a pet, or I got to find a romance, or that's how I'll get the love. But then God's love and your love for yourself is always there. So we build up these beliefs about money, and the hustle culture is like, it's based on there's not enough out there. I got to hustle and beat myself up, to compete with these things, and then if I don't do that, if I don't make enough money, somehow I'm bad. Well, most of the population on the planet, first of all, 10% of the population lives beyond below poverty level. And then in between that and even maybe to the top 1%, everybody's at various levels of lack. But it's all an illusion. If the society was structured differently, everybody would have housing, people would have food. So you have to have housing and food and a meaningful purpose and love. You're pretty rich. Having an extra yacht ain't going to make a big difference. So we're conditioned to hustle. In China, they have the what's it called, the lay down culture or something, or the laying flat culture, where these Chinese kids, they go through these colleges and classes and whatever, and they get college degrees. There ain't enough jobs for all those people, just like in America. It's a scam, the whole, the thing. We need like guys who could do plumbing. We don't need, 15,000, university professors. So they have a laid down culture. They were like, well, I went through college and I did everything the society said to me. If I'm not going to get paid, I'm not going to work. I'll go work for a little bit and then go to a cafe and play, video games and everything. And then I'm just going to lay down and do nothing. Screw you, society. But that's happening a lot. People are like, well, why am I beating myself up and hustling if I'm not going to get compensated? It doesn't make any sense.
It's true. And so why do you see so many spiritually aware men still fall into burnout, perfectionism, or people pleasing?
Yeah, those are all the things that I've battled. Many other lifetimes, and you've had this too. I'm kind of getting a little take on your energy in past lives, but we lived in monasteries and ashrams or mystery schools. And we'd say, well, do I want to be a farmer growing corn, or would I rather go and learn the esoteric secrets of the universe? You throw away your rake and you run off with that group because you want to see what it's all about. So what would happen is that we would get very comfortable, and then they would set these unrealistic goals. Example, we all know the classic story of Buddha. He was a rich prince, went off, did all the extreme practices, and then one day he was sitting under a tree and became enlightened, and he was done. Not true. Buddha was just as human as me or you. He had emotions. After that, a Bodhi tree awakening experience, and we've had them. You have this great awakening. You feel like, oh, I'm on top of the world. Now I know everything. And then your ex-girlfriend calls you up and calls you a jerk, and you're like, oh, and then something happens, something comes up. So Buddha lived his life. He had to keep working on it. Jesus was perfect. Well, that's the story they want to tell you. But somehow at that temple that day, they let it slip that he got angry at the money changer and he flipped over a table or whatever he did. Didn't sound like the Jesus that I'm taught about, but he was a human being, and he had a wife and he had children. So we're told these stories. So you're in an ashram. So now we go in a past lifetime. You're in some ashram. You're like, oh, here's this great, whatever. Here's this great hero. I want to be like them. Now you're like, okay, now I got this in there. And you're trying to live up to that thing. And if I don't live up to it, I'm not a man, or I'm not a good person. Or I'm not doing my spiritual purpose. Then you come in another life and like, all right, let me try a different body, a different time, and try to do it again. You're not striving for perfection. You're realizing you're already perfect. There's not some ideal way of living or some ideal spirituality. This whole exploration, whatever you're doing, is perfect. The first light beings that came to this planet, and there's been many different races and things that have happened, all these things have come to this planet. But some of the first beings said, oh, I'm a light being. I can't touch that flower. I see these beautiful flowers. I know what I'll do. I'll create a humaniform, body and become a human being. Now you're a human. You're like, oh, I can touch the flower. I can drink the water. This is great. What else can I do? Let me have sex with that other life form over there. Let me build a log cabin. And it went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. There's some idea in these new age circles that somehow when you get enlightened, you'll be wearing a crystal, sitting on a mountain, doing some mantra, and somehow you'll have achieved perfection or whatever. These are all fantasies. Those are stories that we're told for various reasons. Experiencing this reality with our emotions and all the shadow and all the stuff we're going on, it's messy and it's sloppy and it's beautiful. That's the exploration, is to explore what it is to be here and be fully human and be spirit, to be both of those things. It's not always clean, but people like stories. We like the story of Superman because it's like, oh, this guy came from Krypton and then he got a costume and he was beating people up and he's a savior of the planet. Okay, well, that's great. But the more interesting stories about heroes is when they have like Batman. Why Batman is actually more popular than Superman, because Batman's like a little bit, this guy's a little bit crazy. He's got a little bit too much vengeance. He's a little bit violent. He's a good guy, but there's something dark about him. He battles with himself. That's a more human character than Superman.
Yeah, and I find that life, because since I've been doing this walking this path, I've realized that life is firstly a massive mystery, and there's always another level of knowing, gnosis, and the things that I thought or believe were true or just how they were 8.5 years ago when I first started to really awaken. I look back at that guy, and that guy is a completely different guy from the guy I am now. And I am much more balanced, a lot more patient. And life is a journey. And I think that we're just not given the right tools, and we don't have the right people to look up to as role models to teach us these things. And, I find that as men, men have a particular purpose. We're the ones that we're designed to do all the hard work, the heavy lifting, all of the complicated and complex stuff, right? But we don't have, we're not given the tools or taught how to think in order to solve problems.
They're definitely not were role models. The closest thing I came to when I was a little bit younger was I saw that movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, where he kind of goes on this mystical journey, and he was kind of like a strong guy, but like sensitive. But yeah, I mean, I wonder. I think we have to become, and I'm glad you're doing this podcast and all the great work that you're doing, because then people say, oh, there's that guy doing that. When I got into the sphere of the manosphere and I was like studying other teachers, I'm like, it's more recent for me. I began to find all sorts of interesting men who are doing more things. Some are more like Nordic, like we're going to go in the mountains and hunt mammoth and, live like off the land. And there's other guys who are more like technocrats who are like, well, we're going to build this perfect civilization, whatever. But there's different, strains of this. A couple of months ago, I was at a class with a guy. It was like an online thing. Lovely guy from California, but very California snag, like talking like, this and he wanted to play music during the thing and his emotions, and like he was one step away from being a chick. Throw a wig on that guy, and it's like, you had a woman there. And I'm like, yeah, that's a little bit too sensitive, because I can wax poetically, and I know you can too in moments, but then I have to, drink a beer and eat some pizza and, kick, play volleyball or something. I got to do something. I got to drive my car fast or something. And I used to joke. I was younger. I used to play video games. I used to play that game GoldenEye, and I'd be playing the game GoldenEye. Whatever. But I was like on a spiritual path, and I was like, I got to play my video game, blow things up for a couple of hours, and then I can come back to being a better person. Because you like blowing things up and building things, and that's like a more of a male, because we're on the earth. So
yeah, definitely.
Role models. You're a role model. This is what we're doing. We're trying to figure it out here.
Well, thank you. I try my best to do the things that I say, to live it as I talk it. It's a hard path, but I do my best, and this is why I always say to people,
you're not doing your best. You are the best right now. You're doing, because you're putting yourself out there. I mean, who are we going to look up to? Obama? And people were like, oh, Obama's such a great guy. And then later on, you're like, yeah, I'm not too sure about somebody. I like him. I like his personality, but I don't know. But even he was a different type of male energy, so there was good and bad things about him. So, but you're doing it. You're doing wonderful things. So this is great. I mean, when I saw this podcast, I'm like, conscious man. Yeah, I want to be on that guy's show. And I was like seeing your videos, and I'm like, yeah, this guy, he's still going into deep stuff, not just, like superficial things, because we're not going to grow that way. You got to like really push that edge and go very deep. And I've gone to places that were just very strange, like dark places or very like abstract. I've done light body work and all sorts of things. And opening that up, that's being a man. A man is being an explorer. Let's go out and see what's out there. Let's go. And within, let's go see what's within, because you can go travel around the world but never learn anything. But when you go within, yeah, you'll learn things about yourself that sometimes aren't always pleasant, but you need to face that shadow. That's a lot of the work too that we're doing now, shadow work.
I completely agree. So what's your definition of conscious power, and how is it different from ego-based control?
There's the ego, and then there's the refined ego. So there's a thing about, there's the ego of somebody saying, there's the ego of somebody saying, I don't have an ego. I'm just a humble servant of God. Yeah, BS. If you're good at something, if you're a good hairstylist, or you can, ride a motorcycle, you're not going to say, oh, I'm just a humble servant of God. No, you're going to feel good about your accomplishments. It's only when you overdo it There's a balance between the refined ego, which says, I have power, but not at the expense of other people. I can always tell a powerful person because they make other people feel powerful. If I see that they're not making people feel powerful, I know it's not a powerful person. So I'll say something controversial, but this is true for me. Trump is obnoxious at times. I'm from New York. I grew up with guys like this. There's 10 of those guys on every block. But he actually is pretty supportive of people. If you actually don't take all the media bias, he encourages people. He's done a lot of businesses, not a perfect man, but he's trying to empower people because he knows he can't run the planet or America by himself. He has to put good people in there. He's saying, take your power back. That's generally a conservative view, which is be self-reliant, be empowered. On the other side, people say, oh, no, you're a poor person. You can't possibly manage your life. Oh, that's terrible. Let me do everything for you. Well, that makes weak people. So there's a balance of helping other people where you give them just enough, where you empower them. They need money. Okay, give them money for a little bit or a project or support or whatever. But then they have to go along their own volition. One of the worst things that ever happened in America was welfare. Because what happened is that once we had welfare and people got addicted to it, then they're like, well, I'm not going to work. There was a thing I'm sorry?
No, that's a fact. It's the same thing in Europe. The welfare system has destroyed Europe.
In Denmark, they used to have a thing. If you were unemployed, I think it was Denmark or Sweden, you could go 5 years without working. So people would say, all right,
damn,
I'm going to take 5 years. Until 5 years later, they would get a job. And they're like, no, it's not working. We're going to make it 6 months now. So that was a lesson. So being a powerful person, a powerful conscious man, to be honest, at this point, what I'm finding is to live that, I have to go so deep into my own belief systems about power. It's not power over people. It's not power under people. It's not manipulating people. It's being so connected to your higher self or your divine self that you are the power. And when you are that power, you're not aggressive with it. It's like the sun. Every morning, the sun wakes up and it just showers the planet with warmth and radiance and light. It's feeding everything. 24 hours a day on some point of the planet, it's feeding that planet. The sun doesn't say, hey, can I get a good review on Yelp or Google reviews? Can you give me a pat on the back? It can't because it's a star. It's a sun. It can't do that. But it just does its job every day and it just gives the energy. So to me, the ultimate powerful man would be somebody who's so powerful, they just give naturally. They don't always need a pat in the back, although it's not bad, ladies. If there are ladies listening to this, good to give compliments to men. We need them. But you're a powerful person.
I agree. Men, I was talking to my sister about this recently, and while all men are different, a lot of men tend to like compliments when they do good things.
Oh, yes.
And I am very much like that as well. I don't know why, but it seems to be that way, that a lot of men, one of our love languages is words of affirmation. So for girls out there listening, Egan is right. If a guy is a good guy and he does something good, a compliment every now and then goes a long way to helping that guy do even more good things for you.
I remember one time a woman called me handsome. I mean, I've had it many times. Not that I'm bragging too much. But she said, hey, handsome. And I was like, like that's like when you're hungry and you go down to the sub shop and you eat that Subway sandwich, you go, that hit the spot. It was like, I see these guys in the gym working out and they're doing this stuff. And I'm like, damn, look at that guy. And look at that guy. No woman's ever saying that's a good job. They're just kind of like looking on the treadmill. They want to look at the treadmill, looking at their phones. And this guy next to them is like busting their butt to look good for them or to be strong. And they're like, whatever, I'm just going to do my thing. And you say, I go in the gym. I say, hey, you got a good workout. And I did it one time with some guy. He's like, thank you. I was like, man, you're very good. He goes, yeah, oh, thank you. And I could tell that they made the guy's day. So,
but what you're saying is true, because the life of a man is that we hardly get compliments for anything, ever.
And now we're getting beat up.
We're starved for it. So what you said about like that hitting the spot for hunger, it's actually a very good analogy, because men in their life hardly ever get if you get, I'm being generous here, if you get maybe 5 compliments in a week, you've gotten a lot. I would say that most men probably get maybe 10 compliments a year, right? Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll get 5 compliments in a lifetime.
That's what I'm saying, right? And so girls out there, like, you know, like we're humans too, and we do like words of affirmation. We do like compliments. So when you can, please compliment the good men in your life, because that gives them more encouragement to do more good things for you. So do you believe we're witnessing a collective initiation of men where old models of success and leadership are collapsing?
Everything's being rearranged so much. I mean, the level of complexity. I used to work with cards called the Mayan Oracle. They're based on the Mayan symbols. I was a Mayan priest in the past life, and so they have these like oracle divination system. And there was one card, number 13, which was called complex stability. So I think what's happening is that you ever get like a box of cereal and you shake it? When I was a little kid, they used to put toys in the thing. So we get the cereal, we're shaking that baby going, all right, like we're going to crack this safe. We better figure out where that thing is. So you're shaking it, whatever.
Yep.
And like right now, like everything's being shaken up. You know, you have the transgender women. You're like, okay, well, I was a guy last week, but now I'm a woman and I'm going to compete with you in the Olympics. And we're like, okay, now we're shaking things up there. Or we're like, okay, now we're in this country, but you know what? Every year, we're going to invite 200,000 more new people despite not having enough housing for the existing population. So it's shaking things up. And so all these things are being shaken up, the ideologies, the technology. And, you know, sometimes you have trial by fire or baptism by fire. We talk about this in war. I work with some veterans and everything. And, you know, that you go to basic training, and then they're like, okay, now it's time to go to war, and they throw you into the battlefield or out of a plane. You got to figure it out. So I think what's happening is our initiation is that we're in this situation, and by the way, there's no victims. You know, there's no victims, only volunteers. So whenever I complain about something, and I love to complain, but whenever I complain about something, there's always an awareness that I'm creating my reality 100%. I chose to be here. I chose to be in this body. I'm choosing to explore this, and I'm here as long as I'm in this body. So we're choosing to go through this exploration, and that the empowerment is not going to come from women acknowledging us, although that's nice. It's not going to come from building a better robot. The true empowerment, the initiation, is going inward and connecting with the divine self, higher self, the soul, and letting that express through us to the best of our ability. That's the initiation. So we're all waking each other up. Back 30 years ago, like when Oprah came on TV, and she had a different energy than a lot of people. She did a lot of good. Don't always agree with her positions on things, but that was a breakthrough moment. Tony Robbins was somebody who woke with a lot of people in the 80s and 90s, did amazing work. Eckhart Tolle, Louise Hay. I mean, they're just, you know, the Dalai Lama. There's certain things of people that have been out there. So we're going through an initiation. In the manosphere, I'm not sure. I like some of Trump's energy, and there's certain things I don't agree with. I like Elon Musk because he's been very successful and very forward-thinking. But again, he can be challenging at times. But each man has to go on his own hero's journey. You know, like when men come to me, I say, well, look, here's how we relate. I'm Merlin, the eccentric guy, the magician, and you're King Arthur. And so we're going to go on our journey, and I'll help you awaken, and I'll be your wingman, and I'll be there for you, and I'll challenge you and, you know, do those things. For myself, I had many mentors who initiated me. I have a lot of non-physical guides like you have. So I remember many times I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'll be like upset about something, and my guide would say, okay, well, let's talk about it. 3 hours later, after the intense processing and feel like I put through a meat grinder, I'm like, okay, and I get an hour of sleep or something like that. So the initiations are happening in many different ways. Ooh, my thing got a little fuzzy there.
No, that's fine. It will record at a higher quality.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Yeah.
The initiations are happening for each person in a different way, in a different process. And It's going to mean that we have to be patient with our process and we have to surrender to it. And that's the most difficult part. Is it all sounds well and good to be an empowered man, but in reality, what has to happen is we're being forced into the dark corners of our being and to go very, very deep. And it's like getting a teeth pulled. You know, you went through the dark night of the soul many times. You're going through these things. It's painful, very, very painful at times, but necessary. And that's the initiation, not one initiation, not the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree or Jesus in the desert or whatever. You can go through many initiations in a week or a lifetime.
It's facts. And I tell this to my clients as well. I say that it never stops. And this is why I don't call it the dark night of the soul, because people think it's over. I call it the refinement period, because you're constantly being refined and the temperature constantly gets hotter and hotter. So you're becoming purer and purer and purer, you know?
Yep.
So guys, we can take a very, very short break here to say, if this conversation is resonating with you, pause for a second and share this episode with one man who needs to hear it. If you're listening on a podcast platform, leave us a 5-star review, as that helps us to be recommended in the algorithms. Because the more men who awaken to conscious power, the faster we evolve as a collective. Also follow us on Instagram at Adriano_246 or at the Conscious Man 7 podcast on Instagram, and Todd Cave on Facebook to see what we get up to on the daily. Now let's go even deeper with Egan.
Okay.
So you teach men to manage their energy, emotions, and thoughts. What's the first step to becoming energetically sovereign?
It's going to be the same answer. There was a famous teacher, which most people don't know about, but his name was Vernon Howard. Maybe 1 in 1,000 people know who he was, but he wrote a bunch of books. He basically compiled a lot of the wisdom teachings of other teachers. He died probably about 15, 20 years ago. So he had one famous phrase. We had two. It's only 2 words. Wake up! That's what he would tell people. Wake up! And you know, his whole thing was awareness is everything. So what I found was that to being sovereign being, to being free, the first thing is you have to be conscious. If you're in the matrix and you don't know about the ego mind, you identify with the ego mind. You look at the outer reality, you go, this is reality. You feel energies, you feel, oh, well, that must be me. I'm feeling these things, I'm seeing these things, I'm thinking these things, must be me. If you don't wake up and become more mindful, you'll never be free. About when I was your age, I was in my mid-40s, I said, I got to go to the next level. What am I going to do? So I began studying this course. It's an audio course. It's called Clearing Energy with Your Divine Self by a woman named Sanaya Roman. It's an audio course, like 20 meditations or something like that. And so the whole thing is, it's a very simple process. You connect with your divine self, like you calm yourself down, you connect with your divine self, and you think of something you want to clear. You could say, so Todd, you could say, well, I got up this morning and I felt anxious about something. Okay, so you do the one about clearing emotions. So go into the thing, connect with your divine self. Okay, what am I feeling? Fear. So you say, okay, what am I feeling? Why? Okay, and you trace it back to the belief or something that's going on. And then you would give it to the light and you would clear it. Sounds very simple. Very, very simple. But what happened is that every time I did those meditations, it was forcing me to do the same thing. Identify what I was feeling. Really feel it. Because I had to know what I was going to clear. So I'm feeling this. And I became very sensitized, saying, well, I'm feeling fear. Is it my stomach? Is it my heart? I'm feeling anxious. What am I feeling? What's the belief? And so I began to expand my awareness of really what was going on within me. Not the outer world, not the mind. From that basis, from that foundation, then when I did other spiritual work, I had that awareness. I was in tune with myself. I was aware, and I had the connection with my soul, my spirit. I call it the divine self. Other people call it other things, source, God, what have you. So that was the way to really expand my awareness, to get in touch with my power, But that was the main thing. Your podcast is called The Conscious Man. Some people say, "Oh, conscious, unconscious." Like what is that? I know what conscious means, but that's the trap. You think you're conscious, but you're not conscious, and so wake up. The other day, I got somebody upset, and I was like kind of processing the feeling, and I said, "Oh, I want this from that person. All right, well, what if I don't get it from that person?" And I cleared the energy. But I was conscious enough not to project it onto them. They may have triggered it within me. But human beings are like oranges. You squeeze an orange, you're going to get orange juice out. If you get upset about something and somebody squeezes you, whatever's inside your conscious is going to come out. If you're in a clear space, nothing will come out. If you're in an unconscious space, you're hiding some deep feeling, then that's what's going to come out. So I often notice that I'm squeezing people. And in a nice way, I squeeze them. I'll say things and I squeeze them, and they get angry at me. And I'll say, well, "What are you feeling? What's going on?" And they'll typically project it onto me, like, "Oh, you're this terrible person. You made me feel it." I'm like, no, I can't make you feel anything. I really can't. It's always you're creating your reality from your own consciousness. So to really expand as much as you can, you've got to become more conscious. You got to wake up. And what's really going on with me? I'm aware of the activities in my mind, but not identified with them. I'm the observer, the witness of my experience. I'm talking to Todd. At the same time, I'm mindful of my feet are on the floor. I can feel the temperature of my shirt. I can observe how I'm presenting myself to Todd. I can be aware of him. I can project how the people, so I'm aware of all these different ways. Eckhart Tolle often does the mindfulness. Being mindful, being conscious of really what's going on. Really being honest with you. That's the core of all the power. Because you don't have that, you'll always be giving your power away to something else, saying, "That's where I got my power from," or "That's taking it from me." Both are lies. You're creating it.
I like what you said of humans are like oranges. You squeeze them and juice comes out. So that makes so much sense. Like when you deal with people, sometimes you end up squeezing them and what's inside of them comes out. So very interesting analogy. So how can sensitive or empathic men turn sensitivity into strength instead of seeing it as weakness?
You use it as a navigation tool, and you just accept the feelings. There's a technique. It's a very simple one. I read it in a book, as I often did. I'd read something in a book, and then I would try it out and do it 1,000 times. And like, okay, that works or it doesn't work. But the simple suggestion was, whenever you're feeling something, just imagine you're surrounding that feeling or thought with love, or like you're surrounded by love. So remember earlier in the podcast, I was talking about my mother? And then one time for her birthday, we were like, "Here's your gifts. Here's your wonderful thing." And she, raked us over the coals. So I simply went back into that memory and imagined that every interaction with my mother, I was surrounded by love. That every experience in my life, I was surrounded by love. And so as soon as I say that, somatically, my body goes strong. Not, "Oh, I didn't get the love there." It's like, oh, love is always omnipresent. We can't see it, but that's because we think physical reality is reality, or my mind is reality, or what the mass conscious reality. But if you brush those things aside, there's the true spiritual reality of love, abundance, peace, total acceptance. It's a strange thing that ties into being a man. It's going to be a funny thing that when you die, you go up to the afterlife and they go, "How'd you do?" "Oh, okay, I did pretty good." And they go, "It was all just made up. You just kind of went to explore that. You were always safe and loved no matter what you were doing. You just believed you were a separate being." "Oh, yeah, I remember now. Now I know everything in the cosmos. All the stuff I wanted to know when I was on the planet. Now you tell me, I would have liked to have known it down there." So we're always surrounded by love. And so even if you squeeze somebody's oranges, I still love them. I'm very skilled at annoying people. I'm a catalyst. Sometimes I say things, I'm like, "Well, why do you say that? Why do you feel that?" And people get mad at me. And I let them get mad. I let them think about it. There was a woman who was bothering me, being obnoxious to me. And I said, why every time you see me, you got to be so obnoxious? "Oh, well, Anyway, the next time I saw her, she was nicer to me. Because I called her on her behavior. I didn't make her wrong. They're doing the best they know how. And we see these human beings bumbling around, the woke people who keep on telling you, you shouldn't be a man. You should put on a dress and eat quiche and, go out with a drag star, like this is what you should be doing, and put a bone in your nose. I'm like, hey, I don't have any tattoos or bones in my nose. I'm not wearing a dress or makeup, but thank yous no matter. And I know from their belief system, they think they're trying to help me in some way. But I can still love them.
It's a weird way of trying to help someone, you know what I mean? But I guess to each is to own. So what's one daily practice you personally use to realign when the world feels heavy?
You stay aware. We talked about sensitive men. You stay aware. Typically what I'll do is, I've gotten it down to a system now where if I'm feeling a little bit off, I stop, connect with my divine self, and whatever that energy is, if I say, oh, well, it has to do with this person, I just clear it. Just like I'd be clearing off a windshield or wiping off a dirty table. I don't identify with it. I don't make a whole story about it. Or if I make a story about it, I make less of a story about it. I don't base my reality on the ego, the echo, or the impersonal energies. I connect with my divine self. For the sensitive men who struggle with other people, that's a whole other topic and a whole other conversation. We want to be sensitive to people, but we're not a doormat. And also, if you're a very sensitive man, I'm a very sensitive person. I joke around, I have other strategies, but I can take on the energy of another person. I can feel what people are feeling 5,000 miles away. I used to be a professional psychic. I could take on any energy. People call me up, my clients call me up. They're not saying, hey, can you tune into this wonderful person? They're usually like, can you tune into this person I'm having conflicts with and is very hateful towards me? And I got to tune into them when I'm working with them. I love them. Simply tune into it. Try to see them from an expanded perspective. Don't take it on. Maintain a clear boundary. Practice centering the divine self. That's the true reality. People say, well, this is reality. I'm on a podcast now with Todd. This is a dream reality. This is an experience we're having in this moment. It's fine. But the true reality is something that we can't understand, but it's that connection. You felt it. When you talk about your higher self and you're like, I feel this sense of well-being in my body, and I feel like clear, and I have guidance, and I feel wise or compassionate. That's when you're plugged into your soul or your higher self or your divine self. That's the true reality. So the trick that we're trying to do as sensitive men and spiritually awakening men is to stay attuned to that reality and operate in this world with all its complexities. Not going to do it perfectly. You'll have days when you're maybe too weak or too strong, or you don't get it right, or you think you said the wrong thing. There is no one right way to do it, but you can attune to that true self and use that as the tool to navigate you moment to moment. Otherwise, you're going to be pulled in by this person, that person, whatever thoughts come up. That's the way to navigate.
Okay. And you mentioned energy leaks. What are some unseen ways men lose power without realizing it?
The solar plexus is the seat of your personal power. Holding my solar plexus right here. It's right above the belly button. When I'm working with people, let's say somebody, a lot of times I work with people in relationships. We're all in relationships. So 9 times out of 10, if I'm working with a client, they'll say, well, I'm in a relationship with my child or my parent or my lover or whatever. Wife. Okay. I'll often see lines, and there's 2 ways that energies can leak or be strengthened. So very simple. You go, Todd, you go to buy a car, and you have a car salesman who really wants to sell you a car. Immediately you feel like this tension in your stomach because you feel like they're trying to manipulate you. Would you like to drive the car? Well, what's your credit rating like? You know what? And all of a sudden they're like sucking you in. Happened to me one time at a gym membership. I went to go get a gym membership, and I'm like, I think it was like $400. It was many years ago. It's like a lifetime thing. So the guy brought me in a room talking to him. All of a sudden another guy is there, like blocking the door. They were not going to let me go until I signed up, until I got myself out of there. But my solar plexus was like, ugh. So somebody's trying to manipulate you. You'll see a line of light going from their solar plexus to yours. It can look like dental floss. It can look like a hose or like a plug, thing there. It can be a water hose, and you'll feel it. So you can either cut it. So you're saying psychically, no, thank you, and you cut it, or you do the evolutionary move and you move it up into your heart. When you connect with people on the heart level, there's no manipulation. If somebody comes to you with the solar plexus and you move up the energy of your heart, they can't control you. But that's how we link the energy, because we're giving power away. And you can also give power away, that solar plexus, to my car, my job, my identity. You're giving an energy. You're making your power dependent upon that. When
your
we're
happiness
in the higher self,
your partner as well?
Absolutely. Your partner, whatever. Even if you think you have a good relationship, you got to meet on the heart level. But we'll see a lot of dysfunctional relationships with people where the guy, for example, it could be the woman, they're trying to go from their heart to the other person's heart. But the other person is going from their solar plexus to their solar plexus. You'll see these sometimes on the videos on YouTube where they're like, look at what this woman did to this poor guy. And I'm looking at it psychically. I'm like, yeah, I can feel the energy. But take two people who are very loving with each other. Let's not even talk about a man or a woman. Just say like a mother and a child. If they have a good relationship, they're just connected on the heart level. That's why the mother cradles the baby over her heart, connecting her heart to the baby's heart. We hug people. We're hugging somebody. We're connecting our hearts. So we create, it's called soul linking. So if I think of somebody now, I do two things. I connect with my higher self or soul. I see that person connect with their higher self or soul through a line going up. And then I will send a line of light from my person, my heart to that person's heart. So we create a triangle, me to them and both of us to spirit. And that's where we're evolving to. In the past, it was solar plexus. It was a patriarchal society which said, do what we're telling you to do right now. Follow the orders. We also had periods in the past, as you know, because you study quite a bit of history, of matriarchal societies. Some of them were lovely. Some of them were just like men. That's why you see a lot of women who are acting like men. Oh, we're the matriarchy. We're going to help you. Yeah, well, they can just be as bad as men.
Facts. It's true, because we're all human, so we have, we have similar traits, in terms of on a basic level, power corrupts eventually, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, once anyone tastes the chalice of power, they tend to get corrupted.
I know that, baby. I had some of those lifetimes, and I started when I was a younger cat, I was in my early 30s, I was teaching, and I had these classes, and like people started following me. And like students would fall in love with me, both men and women. Can't blame them. But I was I had more hair there too, and a nice little beard. So I was a hot item. And people would start following, and they start following me around. I was like, this is kind of weird. Like it's like strange. I don't want to be a charismatic personality. I have charisma, but I don't want to be. It's a burden to be worshipped. It's a very strange place. The reason that all happened was, in past times, we were all connected with spirit. When people lost connection with their spiritual connections, they're like, I don't feel the power anymore. I don't know who I am. Maybe this guy can help me. So they created priests who say, well, I'll be the intermediary. I have a connection with spirit. I'm a king. I'm a priest. Come and do what I say, and I'll give you some of that connection. And so that's what created all the intermediaries. Now we're saying, we don't need these intermediaries. We can have our own connection with spirit. But that's what happens when you lose your power. I'm this little microscopic being. I'm not the divine. Help me. I need Jesus. I need Buddha. I need a something. And you're like all the time, you're the infinite. All the time. You just got to remember who you are. And then you are connected to infinite abundance or knowledge or whatever, or power. And then you don't need to play all the games, all the power games and control games and manipulation, or plugging into people's solar plexus. Do what I say. This happens in relationships a lot. I had to learn it because I would try to manipulate. I'm like, wait, that's not working as I'm evolving. I have to be more co-creative with everybody, whether it's a friend, whether it's in a business. I can't just force them to do what I want them to do. I have to come to them with my heart, in a balance.
Yeah, it's definitely about balance. So which brings me on to my next question. How can men balance ambition and alignment to create without burning out?
Follow your spirit without hesitation. I heard that phrase many, many years ago. there's something called the desire body. So we've heard of the physical body, mental body, the emotional body, the etheric body, but there's something called the desire body. And as I say this, you'll know exactly that you have one because it's something that always wants more. Like, I can do more. I can be more. And the thing is that it's like a fire stove where you pour coal into it or wood into it or something. It always wants more to feed on. So you'll notice that in life is that no matter where you get, something says, oh, I wanted that job and now I got it. Okay, great. Well, now I want to move up. And now I want a bigger salary. Or I got this girlfriend. Okay, that's great. Maybe I can find a better one. Or maybe I now have kids. There's something within us that always wants more, and there's spiritual ambition. You have that great spiritual awakening, like, oh, I'm on top of the world, baby. I know it all. I'm in worship, the great Egan. I can do it all. And you're like, what if I could do more? It's a spiritual ego. It's part of the desire body, which is always wants more, and it's never satisfied. So we have to learn to say, okay, I want more, but I also need to know when enough is enough, when I'm ahead of the game. Because you can never, that's why some people go crazy, because they get to the top of success mountain and they're like, oh, I achieved all success, and then they fail because they've done everything and they're like, what's the challenge now? So they fail and then they have to restart all over again, and then they can fulfill their vision of doing more. So we have to balance and be aware of that. There's always a part of us that wants more, but don't identify with it. Use that energy, but don't identify it, because spiritual ambition, financial ambition. I mean, at one point I was financially independent and free. I could do whatever I wanted every day, not have to worry about work. And I was crawling the walls because I didn't have enough to do. But then you don't want to create a life where you're too busy in trying to accomplish things or have too little. You want that balance where you're just challenged enough, where you have, something to look forward to and you're engaged and challenged and growing, but not so much where you're exhausted by it. You don't want to get in that space. And that's taken me a while to get to that space.
Yeah, definitely. It's a real struggle in that respect for men, because we either are chasing money, but we have no time, or we have loads of time and no money, or we have no time and no money. So it's a real big dichotomy that we have, because especially if you have family and stuff, you work hard and you provide all of this, but you don't even spend time with the family. So, there's another hit there, right? So it is challenging. So what do you see as the biggest energetic block men bring into relationships?
I mean, over the years, I've worked with thousands of people. The men who do the best are the ones who self-validate, feel good about themselves. Now, the thing about relationships is none of them are forever. I can test this because I've lived many lifetimes. You will die, and then all your relationships are suddenly over. But all relationships are temporary. It could be 5 minutes, 5 months, 5 hours, 5 weeks, 5 years, 5 lifetimes, 50 lifetimes. I was in a relationship with a woman earlier this year, and I'd had many lifetimes with her. She had been my daughter. She had been my master when I was a slave in Rome. Good times. She'd been my partner. So I know we're in the future, another lifetime, where this sounds crazy, she's an android. Looking at her one day, and I could see the overlay of her future face, and it was like, in a future life, we're going to be together, and you're an android. So souls can inhabit androids, by the way. That's another thing.
That's levels.
Yeah, that was, talk about relationships. I had relationships where I'd meet somebody, and I'd say, well, they feel familiar to me, and whatever. And then I met one woman, and about a couple of months, and I'm like, yeah, I can now remember the lifetimes where we were married, and then this other guy killed me over you, and then he became your husband, and we knew the other guy, and I'm like, okay. And then this past year, I met a woman, and I was like, I felt very comfortable with her. We clicked, and I started having all the recall of all the lifetimes. And I'd be looking at her, and I would see the overlays of her other faces on her. And it was, and then her personality would change. One moment she was very docile, like my child. And the other moment she was like my master, saying, you better, like a coldness. In Rome, my story was I was an African slave. Same charming Egan, but just in a different color. And I was a porter. So I was part of we were like porters for like these traders. And so they did a little sneaky trick on us. We went all over the continent, all over Asia, and we got to Rome. We thought, okay, payday, and we'll pick up a new gig and head back home. No, they sold us at the slave market. We're all black. Well, you know what? We're traders. We can make money selling you. And so we were slaves, because technically, even though we were porters, we were not free men. So I became Menicus. That was my Roman name, and I had a mistress. And I had to serve the household. And I kept on trying to escape, and eventually they killed me. And so they would have Roman parties. So before TV and the internet, what did you do? You drank and you had sex. So they'd say, hey, you know what would be fun? Let's have a party together and get all our slaves in there and have sex with them. Yeah, let's do that. Good times. So, that's what ended up. So now I'm in a relationship with a woman. I'm like, well, I used to be a slave and I had to be her sex slave. So
Wow.
Good times, so these are the things that can happen. And so it's like this created many interesting scenarios between us. I'm like, okay. So, but then there were other things. I had in another lifetime wanted to run away with her. And I wanted to become a mind master. I wanted to go to the esoteric school. So I said, I love you, but I can't be with you. And I abandoned her. So she went off with some other guy. And then in this life, she married that same guy and divorced him. And then I met her. And then subconsciously, I was trying to get with her so I could marry her, because I felt guilty about abandoning her and her getting into a relationship with a guy she didn't really like. So we had a lot of interesting conversations. And she was not as conscious as me. So if we come back to the question about, the biggest blocks to being a man, I would say there's ones for regular men, but for conscious men, being able to share these very deep and profound experiences with somebody who can receive them. Because I started sharing with him and she wasn't exactly open. Whereas with another metaphysical woman, she would totally get what I was talking about and would love that I was sharing that.
Yeah, I agree, because
you've been through this.
Yeah, I find that as I continue to walk this path, relationships are a challenge, but a challenge in the sense where you have to be very cautious on how you share, because what happens is that if you meet someone that maybe at the beginning of their journey, from my experience, you have to be very patient and not dumped a lot of information, because it can overload them and that can really cause a block in the relationship.
That's what I
But then at the same time, if you don't share anything, then it's almost like they don't really know how you are, who you are. So it is a real balance in terms of...
You got to plant seeds. One time I was complaining to one of my spirit guides. I was like, these people, I tell them 1,000 times, they don't get it. And my spirit guide was like, well, Egan, we've told you the same thing 1,000 times and you don't always listen. I was like, you guys. And I was like, you're right. So I found that my sense was that sometimes I'll say something to somebody and they don't understand it, but later on they will, because that happened with me. And so when I was in the relationship with the woman, I was like, she was complaining about her ex-husband. I go, you know what? We all agreed to do this. I go, you're complaining about him, but I'm not perfect. You have things. And you chose to be in a relationship, even though you knew there were problems and you didn't divorce them until later on. So I was kind of making her responsible. She got mad at me. But I was speaking the truth, because if I tell somebody, you're a victim, the balance is, that's terrible that happened to you. I'm so sorry you had that experience. What could you have done differently? Sometimes you can do something differently. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes horrible things happen to somebody. I don't want to make them guilty or a victim. But on the other hand, it all depends on how you respond. Voltaire said, you can't always choose the cards you're dealt with, but you can choose how you play them. So sometimes I've had terrible things happen to me. And I said, how can I use this to my advantage? That's another man thing. How can I make this thing work for me? So sometimes we have to plant seeds and confront women and say this, this, and this, and this. And they don't like it and they get mad or they misunderstand you. But they need to hear that message, just like I needed to hear messages that I didn't want to hear from other people. They're like, I don't want to hear that. And then later on, I'm like, you know what? They're right. I just didn't feel good in my ego. Thank you. And then you're grateful. That's the paradox. You become grateful to the people who upset you, because you realize they were actually trying to help you evolve.
Yeah, accountability for a lot of women is like kryptonite to Superman, to be honest with you. So it's true, right? But I know I can get a lot of attacks for that, but it's a fact. And I stand on it because it's a fact. And I believe in living in a fact-based reality. So it is what it is. So how can a conscious man stay strong and heart open when faced with emotional conflict?
I had something recently. I was dating a woman, and she had the political discussion with me. Again, another person who had different politics. She was very liberal. So I said one thing, and she launched at me. I could feel all the emotion. So I listened. This is the strategies. This is how you defuse a bomb. I listened, and I said, I understand what you're saying because of these different experiences, and here's my experience. You know, it's not a problem for me that you have different beliefs or whatever. And I just treated her with the respect. And then later on, she said, thank you for listening. The previous person I dated, the one who I told you with all the multiple lies, which was several months back, more or less had the same thing, but she was younger and less mature. And she couldn't admit that I was saying anything that was true, even when I was telling her the facts. She said, Elon Musk wants to destroy humanity and go to other planets. So I Googled it. I found the quote, and the quote was, Elon Musk was saying, eventually we'll go to other planets and nobody will be on Earth. That's a lot different than saying you want to destroy humanity. So I told her that, and she didn't like that because I was just saying what the facts are. I said, I can understand. People hate Elon Musk because he has so much money, but the thing is, the guy has made tons of people huge amounts of money. What he's added to the economy, made people millionaires and billionaires, and his innovations. He's not supposed to be a perfect human being, but his work, it's like amazing. So it's like Bill Gates. I don't like Bill Gates. He's a shady character. But Windows and the guy who created Apple, Jobs, they weren't perfect human beings. But look what they did. We can, on this little machine, when I was a kid, I had like a little digital watch that could tell me the time, and now I can talk to people all over the world and do like play games, and I could just live with this thing on an island, and I could see at night and take pictures. I mean, so when people complain about things, about people who are, these innovations and technocrats, well, I don't know how good they have it, but fact checking and accountability, what you just said. Yeah, one thing about being a guy is you have to learn that rarely will they take accountability. Sometimes they will. The mature ones will. A lot of them won't.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to build that in as you're defusing the bomb.
Yeah, you know the thing is, I blame men. It is men's fault that women are like that because we over compliment them. We over
pedestal.
Pedestal. That's the word I was looking for. We over pedestalize women. So what happens that from the time they get like 14 all the way up to when they're older, they have this bubble reality that we men have created because we give them a lot of attention because men want to have sex with women, but we don't tell them the truth because we want to have sex with them. But
the best thing for a guy to do is don't be nice to women. This is difficult for a sensitive new age guy. The less nice I am to them, the more they love me.
I agree 100%, and so that people can get where it can come from. There's some nuance to that in the sense that I think that being nice is merited because being nice means doing nice things. So they have to earn the fact that you will invest time, money, and energy in them. So the same way that we have to earn the right to sleep with them, they have to earn the right to get our time, money, and attention and resources. So if you actually look at it like that, where if there are red flags, just don't deal with the woman, because certainly if you as a man are a red flag to a woman, she's not going to deal with you for the most part, right? But because we men are so basic and simple, where we just want to have sex, is that primal instinct. We will just put up with anything. We will give away everything just to get our rocks off. And I think that men now have to take back their power and realize, hold on a minute, well, women are just human beings. They have flaws. They're not perfect. And we must treat them the same way we treat men, in the sense of like men have to earn other men's respect. So a woman has to earn our respect. So we don't give them nice treatment if they don't deserve nice treatment. If they deserve nice treatment, absolutely give them nice treatment. But because of basic needs, just want to have sex, we've over-pedestalized them, told them they're beautiful when some of them really aren't. You know what I mean? We've not told them the truth because we want to have sex. And if we stay focused on, well, no, we have standards, then what happens that they will respond to us, because women generally respond to men. We don't respond to them. They respond to how we act and react. And if we're soft, not on our mission, have no purpose, we are not a safe pair of hands, they will react to us like that and treat us the way that we treat ourselves. So in reality, if you become a man that is driven on your purpose, fair, firm, have kindness, compassion in your heart, but you have the respect factor built in so that they earn your respect, which means your time, money, energy, and resources. I think there would be a lot more balance in the world in terms of social dynamics between men and women. But because we have lost our way as men, then, women are just responding to how we are because we're lost. So they're even more lost, right?
It's the sim culture, SIMP, the sim culture.
Yeah.
They have OnlyFans. And so now you join OnlyFans and I'll pay you money every month and, send me photos and everything. And so I was watching these crazy stories about some wealthy people would give like $100,000. I mean, they were giving like crazy amounts of money. And I'm like, what is the matter with you? I mean, because they're like, oh, she's beautiful. And then the other thing is, if you go out in public, a lot of women are just, they're not always easy to approach. I'm a charming guy. I can go into a room and I'm working that room, baby. I'm going there and I'm talking to these people and I'm very charming. And sometimes they're just like a coldness of people in general with the culture, at least in America. Latin American countries are a lot different. There's a different approach there, and each country has a little, you've been around, so the different places. But sometimes they're very cold. And so what finds is you're having a battle. But the thing too is if you're not in your male energy, it throws everything off. My mother died when she was 65. She got in a car accident. She got a little bit mixed up with alcohol and some other things. She was unhappy. She was struggling with a lot of things. And I think she was very intelligent. She felt frustrated by her life in different ways. And it just was not a good story. And there were conflicts with how my stepfather had been in the relationship with her because he wasn't always very masculine. One time I remember she was digging at him and he finally said, "Shut up." And she paid attention. I mean, I think it was the only time I ever told her to shut up, And I was like, thank God, it's one for our team, whatever. Other times he was just lapdog all the time. Oh, well, and whatever. And I saw her treat him horribly. I'm like, and then I have another relative. It was happening with another relative of mine where I was hanging out with them, and he was simping with her. He was trying, oh, can I help you, whatever? And she was like, get away. And I was like, what am I? Like he became like a 4-year-old man, like 4 years old. And I saw him revert to being a child. And I'm like, he goes, well, do you want to stay over to my house? And I'm not staying over your house. Your wife is treating you like a child. It's like what my mother used to do. And I'm like, get hold of yourself. What are you doing? But then I realized that I still do things like that. I would try to kiss up. I would try to be, loving, whatever. And not to that extreme, but I would do it because I'm trying to. Women are like a mystery, like they're a puzzle. Does this piece go here? No? Okay, let me try another piece. You keep getting in there, trying to talk to them or whatever. And the thing is, they don't even know what they want. That's the cosmic joke, my friend. If money is a joke, women don't know what they want. So then you're trying to understand them. You're trying to understand something that can't be understood.
You know what? That is so well said, because women don't really know what they want, and men should just stop trying to figure women out.
Some don't.
Well, true. Some,
But a lot of them don't.
But a lot of them don't. There's some that definitely know. But I repeat that I think that when men first stay focused on their internal journey, their purpose, their mission, what they're here to do, add value to society, contribute, stand on business, then you will find that the women will respond, because the thing is that men and women have different journeys, and we are the ones that are built differently. So we have the harder job to do. So we have to get on that job and work on ourselves. And when we do that, we find that the women will get in line and they will follow us because we become a safe pair of hands. And because we're not simps, then if no men are patronizing the OnlyFans girls, they'll stop because they'll go broke. But because there are so many simps, they can do it because the men are paying for it, So what advice would you give to men who feel lost between career success and soul purpose?
Wave down a UFO, go to a planet where the women will just fine. I mean, I've been trying to wave down. I go out at night with the lights and I'm like, can anybody? But what was the question again? I do my comedy material.
Sure. What advice would you give men who feel lost between career success and soul purpose?
It doesn't matter how successful you're in your career. It's funny. You'll see like very successful men who like achieve everything. And they're like, okay, well, now what? So that's a trap. If you're just always doing the career stuff, you kind of lose out on the personal growth and the relationships. You just do the personal relationships, you lose a part of yourself. I don't know the answer because there's never perfect balance. I think it's hit and miss. There were years with my spirituality where I couldn't be in a relationship. I was a basket case. And I had to go deep inner work and I was stretching myself. I had no business being in a relationship, my friend. And I would be no good to anybody. There are other times my nose is to the grindstone. I'm working my business. I did a ton of stuff this year with my website and shooting videos and hanging out with you and other events and everything like that. And then didn't always have time for a relationship. So I don't know if there's really an answer. I would say the most important thing is to be conscious, find your connection with God, whether it's pagan or Wiccan or whatever religion, find that connection, that spiritual guidance. And then find a purpose in life. We all need a purpose. I mean, even if you tomorrow you won the lottery, Todd, what are you going to do all day? Sit around eating chocolate pudding, watching reruns of Friends? I mean, no, you're going to be out doing stuff. You can't just sit around doing nothing. But we're getting addicted to these computer screens. We're getting very soft, like that movie Wall-E, where everybody's fat. Look how many fat people are here. Even I have a little bit of weight, and I'm fairly got a high metabolism. This thing, we're becoming very, very fat, very complacent and everything like that. If you have a strong purpose, it's something that's bigger than you, not just, I got to pay these bills, but I want to help humanity. I want to add beauty into the world or do something good for the world. That's a noble purpose. That's the modern day warrior of how can I not hurt other people, but how can I uplift them with something great that I can put out in the world? You're doing this podcast. This is something great. So you have that. But another guy, if he's just going to his job and he's making sure his kids are fed and his wife is okay, that's a noble purpose too. It's different for each man, but they'll know what their purpose is. It could be raising animals. It could just be being kind to other people or mowing your lawn and having a nice house. Sometimes that's what that guy's able to do based on their level of awareness. But do something of beauty, add something of value to the world. And you'll add your own value and feel purposeful, because the worst thing is people who don't have a purpose. That's why they're easily led astray. People on welfare are like, take that welfare away and make them work. Make them have a purpose in life. Don't let them just sit around all that. It's the worst thing to do. Or give them enough money, but make them work in some other way. Have a purpose, and you'll be a real man.
Yeah, I agree. I think that purpose is the thing that lacks most in men today. And the thing is, what I'm realizing is that all of us innately have a unique purpose here on earth and a unique talent to give the world, because all of us can't be podcasters and all of us can't be, manifestation guru coaches, etc. However, you could be a person that is really, really skilled at, say, editing videos, and you could work with a person that has a podcast to help that person produce the podcast. So you're a part of a team that is basically helping to touch, move, and inspire others. So you be still in your purpose. So my point here is that it's very much about finding the thing that you're good at, the thing that you like to do, and being part of something that adds change and adds value to people. And then you will have more fulfillment in your life, because going to work and just working a job and paying bills, okay, and having a family. I mean, I don't have children, but I have mates that have children, and obviously they say great things about having a family, but there's more to life than that. Your purpose is something that, I mean, is bigger than you, right? Something that you can leave a legacy. You could say, well, you're part of something. And this is one of the things that I try to, tell people about and bring on guests that would G them up and, put that fire back in their bellies to find their purpose in life. And like Yeshua said, pick up your cross and follow him, So how can men support feminine energy, whether in partners or the collective, without losing their center?
Wave down a UFO and go to another planet. I'm trying to have we're almost at the end of our thing, so I'm trying to make a good wrap up. I just find men love women. We know how to, appreciate them. I would say the one thing that really helped me was conscious communication. I learned nonviolent communication, NVC. I think it's called compassionate communication now. And I learned different processes, and we go to workshops and everything. And I find just being honest. As I get older, it gets easier. But just being honest and honoring. I feel like if you honor yourself as a man, you'll honor that woman as a person. It's only when we lose that connection with our own selves. So it's always a two-way street. You have to honor yourself, and you'll honor the other person appropriate. If you honor that other person at the expense of yourself, you're not in right relationship with that person. The best way we can relate to women is with love and compassion, and loving the shadow, accepting that there's going to be messiness. There's an idea that you're going to find the perfect person or your soulmate or your twin flame. And if you just take this course and perfect yourself, you'll be in the right vibration. There's always going to be wrinkles. There's always going to be challenges. So make it okay. They're a human being having experience too. You can love all the parts of them. And in a way, by doing that, you're loving all of your parts. You're loving all of your shadow and making it okay, because there is no perfection. It's just what you're experiencing.
So do you think men and women are meant to evolve together, or must men evolve first internally before harmony is possible?
I don't know if I know the answer to that. There's so many different types of relationships. I've seen where men were more advanced and where women were more advanced, or maybe you wouldn't consider them spiritual in a metaphysical sense, but they were doing good things in the world. I don't know. There's 8 billion people on this planet and counting. There are many different realities. Sometimes when we ask these questions, it depends on what reality you're in. If we were like Amish people and they have very clear delineations of what their society is, that's perfect for what they're doing. For me and for you as conscious men, I don't want a woman who's going to be that submissive, and me calling all the shots all the time. I have to have like a balance and a good communication. So in terms of evolution, everybody's at a different stage. And that's why there's no consensus reality, because I'm like, we're at a certain point, and I look at other people and I'm like, this guy's only had 3 lifetimes. How much is he going to know? They're just still adjusting to being in a human body. And some people are more advanced than us, where they don't have the obnoxiousness and qualities that I have, and they seem to evolve beyond them. So they have different type of relationships. So I don't know. We're all in different spaces and different places.
Okay. So what does the next generation of conscious men look like to you?
Physically strong, more balanced, but basically reflectors of spirit. They're so connected to their higher selves that they're more integrated and balanced. Still strong, still men, but grounded in that blending of their masculinity, but the divine masculine. That's where we have to go. It can't just be from being strong or, this or that or career. It has to be like the wisdom and the love of the divine expressing through the male consciousness. And we're getting there bit by bit.
Well, we have a lot more work to do still, because there's still too many simps out there simping, that's for sure. So what's your message to men who feel they've lost their faith in the world or in themselves?
Other than waving down the UFO thing, the key thing is, because I went through some dark periods, you always are going to go back to your soul or your higher self and sort of replenish yourself there. Find a purpose. The purpose, If somebody works in a restaurant, whether they're making the food or a waiter, you're keeping people alive. Pretty important. If you're a garbage man, you're keeping the environment clean from pestilence. Pretty important. So find dignity with whatever you're doing. Martin Luther King said something about that. Because if you're a street cleaner, be the greatest street cleaner you can be. Be like an artistic, person with it. Find dignity. Don't let other people tell you who you are. Some people, when I tell them a spiritual teacher into this stuff, they go, what are you talking about? You're making it all up. You're crazy. And I'm like, well, but I know I'm doing, helping somebody out there. So I have to, it's self-acknowledgement. Find that self-acknowledgement. Find people to be supportive of you. Find other men. I go to a men's group twice a month. I go hang out with other men. We talk about men topics. And because there's so many women in spirituality, you can get lost in their issues. But if you're a spiritual guy, find other spiritual men to hang out with, to do things with. And then you'll find balance. But find purpose. If you're in a tough spot, get help. Come to somebody like Todd or me or another male coach. Watch a video, do something, and find your balance. But don't try to do it alone all the time, because you can't. You need other men. You need other people too to help you out.
Facts. I find that men today lack brotherhood. And I think that, with shows like this now, we're changing that tide of not having brotherhood. We're creating a really good community over here. So yeah, totally concur with you. So we'll get you on this one. If every man listening took one step today toward enlightenment, what would that be?
Realize that you're already enlightened. You are in the light. Your essence is light. And focus on that. Not so much on trying to get there. That's an illusion. But knowing that you are the light, you are the divine, you are the infinite, you are infinity incarnate. And start off with that thought. What if I was infinity incarnate? What if I was already enlightened? And act that way. Act that way, you will become that way. Very simple.
Think and you become, and just do as you say, So Egan, this has been an awesome conversation. So please tell the lovely guys at the Conscious Man 7 podcast where they can find you. You can plug any books or anything you have, if they want to work with you, all that kind of good stuff, where they can find you and stuff like that.
Please make all checks payable to Egan Sanders. I have a website, egansanders.com, and I also have a YouTube channel. I have a YouTube channel. We can maybe put it in the chat or something like that. And I've been doing videos on that, and that channel is simply called Egan Sanders Men's Enlightenment Coach. But if you go to egansanders.com, that's the best way to reach me. I work by phone most of the time, although I do live classes and online stuff. But just reach out. I can add you to the mailing list. And again, I have clients all over the world that I work with, men mostly, although I still have some female clients for some reason. They do show up from time to time at my events. But egansanders.com, Sanders like the Colonel.
Okay, awesome. And everything Egan will be in the description of this podcast.
Okay.
So guys, this has been an awesome conversation. And one of the things that we touched on today is that being in physically good shape is part of the journey to being a man. And also women as well need to be in physically good shape. With Christmas coming up now, we are entering the season of gluttony, which means that you most likely will put on another 3 to 5 kilos in the next few weeks. Come January, you will be fatter and fatter. So if you would like to get into the best shape of your life, avoid that 3 to 5 kilos of seasonal weight gain, and you would like to also work with someone who will help you improve mentally, physically, and spiritually, hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave on Facebook. Let's have a chat and see if you're a good fit for the Compound Body Training Army. And if you would like to support this podcast, you can do that by visiting our merch store. We have some cool tank tops, hoodies, shirts, and sweats. Link will be in the description of this podcast. And I actually have on the Conscious Man 7 shirt today.
Nice.
So we have it in various colors, red, blue, green, whatever color you like. And with Christmas coming up, it will make a great gift to give to someone. And if you do pick up one of the shirts, just take a picture of yourself with it, send me an email, or you can tag me on Facebook. And if you do, I will shout you in one of the podcasts and or my story on Instagram and Facebook. And if you are on a spiritual journey, or you are now starting a spiritual journey and you would like some help removing some fears and traumas, I can help you to get some magic mushrooms. So if you would like to, access your subconscious mind, because as Egan said today, the subconscious mind is where everything exists, and you would like some help to overcoming some challenges, some mental blocks and stuff, magic mushrooms is a great modality to use. So hit me up on my Instagram at Adriano_246 or my name Todd Cave on Facebook, and I will help you to get some magic mushrooms. Also, if none of those things resonate with you, but you would still like to support this podcast, you can also become a Patreon or Locals member, and you can get cool perks like early releases of podcasts, and you can also get all these podcasts ad-free because they're ads on the podcast platforms. So if you would like to, support this podcast and help us in our journey, help us grow as we are getting some really interesting guests, and we're looking to step up production of the podcast and bringing out 2 a week. And if you would like to help us to take this to the next level, please consider being a Patreon or Locals member, because that will help us with editing and spending some time to research some cool other guests like Egan. So Egan, this has been an awesome conversation. So guys, if today's conversation with Egan opened up your heart or mind, share it right now with a man who's ready to awaken. Subscribe, comment, and join our growing community at the Conscious Man 7 podcast. Remember, consciousness spreads the more we live it. Let's evolve together. This has been another episode of the Conscious Man 7 podcast, where we have conversations that go deeper than the average podcast and challenge the taboos that limit us in our thinking. Egan, thanks again for being a guest on the Conscious Man 7 podcast. Until next time, folks, stay conscious, stay connected, challenge your beliefs, and come out of your comfort zone. Keep smiling, keep shining, and keep being the change you want to see. Speak to you soon. Cheers and namaste.